So if you clicked on this video, chances are that you're either about to start an EPQ, you're currently suffering through it, or you're desperately searching for a way to aid you through the procrastination stage. Been there, done that. So today, I'm going to go through everything you need to know about an EPQ. And I don't just mean the 5,000 word essay, because honestly, I think the biggest misconception that with the EPQ is that getting an A star is not about having the most fleshed out essay. And whilst that does matter, the difference between someone getting a C and someone getting an A star is usually not that one person has a better essay, but rather the process behind it is documented way better. So in this video, I'm going to take you through everything I wish I knew going through the course, and from how it actually works, the assessment objectives, how to approach each production log category, and the biggest mistakes I made and what I had to do if I had to say that again, although never again. So whether you just started or close to your deadline, hopefully this video saves you a bit of the stress. So why use this video? I feel like everyone claims I can miraculously get an A star. Well, I have results. I got 48 out of 50, surprising to me and my supervisor, and that is quite a high A star. I think the A star boundary is 45 out of 50. So obviously I must have done something correct, and I think that could easily be implemented in most people's work. And I do think that the EPQ is quite a wonderful qualification, so I do want to myth bust as well. And honestly, it could be an easy grade for you as long as you understand what the subject requires. And also, I gain no benefit from this video. I am writing this solely just for the sake of educating people to the true extent of the EPQ and how to go about answering specific sections, as well as examples of how that may look from my own project. I personally found videos from other students on their experiences to be super useful, and I think that any information I have on the EPQ is better to be shared rather than me forgetting it. That being said, however, disclaimer, I am not a teacher. This is a resource developed by me, and it's not a replacement for you, okay? The EPQ itself is fundamentally about developing your own ideas, your own independent research and product management skill, and I can't teach you that. So I am sharing what worked for me, and what you need to take from it is essentially the strategies to your own topics, interests, working styles. And after all, universities and examiners want to see your voice and your journey through a project, not a carbon copy of someone else's approach. So while I am striving to ensure the advice I'm giving is accurate, I cannot guarantee it, and I do recommend consulting your supervisor instead for queries or advice. That being said, let's start getting into it. So whenever someone asks what the EPQ actually is to someone else, you tend to hear two different responses. Either a qualification where you write a 5,000 word essay, or please don't ask me, I'm still worried on how I'm going to hand in my first draft, write my mid-project review, and revise for my upcoming works. Both spoken by me, both being very vague, unhelpful answers. I think that the reason why the EPQ is not genuinely appreciated as a subject is because people don't really know what they're getting themselves into, and may not actually be a fit for the qualification in the first place. Yeah, you do write a 5,000 word essay, and I do get that's the selling point, but you can also choose to create a physical project with an accompanied 2,000 word essay, or work with other people if the school allows it. And yeah, it is a lot of words to write for a singular essay, but majority of the marks don't come from that, and it comes instead from the planning process. It does really confuse me when I hear people complain about how long the project log is, because the qualification is generally called the extended project qualification. How's it surprising that majority of your marks come from the project management aspect? So while I can't give you a reasoned judgment on whether the EPQ is worth it to you, I can ask two questions. Can you see yourself dedicated to an academic evaluation of your chosen topic of interest for a long period of time? It feels long, even if it's 2 times it feels long. And can you be asked, in the end, if you answer both no to both questions, the chances of the EPQ being good for you is quite low. And I feel like you're not going to enjoy it regardless, and that will lead to lowering how you'll perform overall. And no one wants to spend a miserable year of their life all to end up with an E. I also think it's not helpful to think of it from the UCAS points. I know that's how the school sells it, like 28 UCAS points, but does that really justify a year? A lot of unis don't look at it, but you can play devil's advocate because it does look good. So yeah, make your decision, but if you've clicked on it, you probably already do it. So yeah. That being said, let's go into the AAs, my favorite section of the video. So AQA states that whilst the EPQ is a qualification that centers around students taking their own projects, it's super duper important that you do understand that whilst the components are a huge significant chunk of the mark, most of the marks come from the reporting and process of your chosen project in the production log. That can be on Project Q or PDF, but I think most people do Project Q nowadays. So if you grad essays where you don't have the stamina to regularly reflect on your work or make out that you have, then realistically you're looking at losing a fair proportion of the 70% marks dedicated to planning and review, something that you do not want. I think it's also important to note that the production log is supposed to be a work in process, meaning that in order to be efficient, you really need to be up to par with meeting internal deadlines. Speaking from personal experience, it's not realistic to leave these tasks to your final hand-in, as you don't gather much from your supervisor meetings, which could impact how you reflect on key moments of your project. After all, the EPQ is a journey, and if there's one thing you can take away from this guide, do not delay on any internal deadlines. It is not pretty, it's not fun. Don't do it. Please stick to deadlines. Okay. Now, most schools organize the EPQ differently. I will leave a link in the description so you can match up, but from my knowledge, most people start the EPQ in October and hand in for May for internal provisional marks, and then get their final marks in the November series. That's what I had. So yeah, do check that. It's also on the timeline section on Project Q. I think that the AAs are so underrated for every subject, but especially for the EPQ. I think that most people approach the sections on the production log and don't realize that they basically already have a stepping stone on how to answer the questions, because you just need to link your experience to 4 things essentially. So the manage, which is AO1, use resources, which is AO2, develop and realize, which is AO3, and review, which is AO4. Now, note that AO3 is a big chunk, 40%. You should be developing and realizing. You need to be evaluating, otherwise what's the point? You can see that most of these are actually evaluation and reflecting on what your supervisor said, how you're finding the journey so far. So do keep that in mind when you're actually writing a production log up. I think it's also important to understand that in the EPQ, being vague and ambiguous is not going to cut it. You need to make it clear that every decision that you're making is deliberately. And reading your production log, the examiner should be able to follow the evolution of your project from the research to finished product. Think of the production log essentially like a storybook. If the introduction was missing, how do you know the backstory of the characters and why they act like the way they do in the present time? It just makes no sense. So please make sure that your production log makes sense and is fully fleshed out. I find that most of the top A-star students have fleshed out ones. Maybe mine's a bit too much, I think, but yeah, you need to write. Okay, I'm sorry. Now, the EPQ can also be seen as a safer choice as a qualification. Grade boundaries are tending to stay the same. They go up in 5s, and 49% of students get an A or an A-star, and so it's not that hard. Obviously, you're not guaranteed this grade. You can't get predicted a grade. So yeah, just work hard. What? Move. Okay, procrastination. I am a victim to procrastination. It's not a great scenario, but you don't need to panic. I am telling you right now, I don't want to go through my own story too much because it's embarrassing and I'm going to take it to my grave, I'm pretty sure. But yes, I've written a lot of things within a few hours. It's not pretty. You have to stay up. But it is manageable. It is manageable as long as you have a focused approach, which is solely on actually submitting some sort of evidence. So work harder, not smarter is my motto, and you can do it. Now, obviously, I've said that the project log is quite important, and I'm going to go through it. I don't think any YouTube videos properly do this. I've only seen one guy, and I want to show my examples on specific little pointers and tips I can give you. Now, I have actually split my project log into little guides on my Notion. This is not a sponsor, but I love Notion, and that is where the whole resources came from in the first place. So you can click on it, and yeah, you have what each section means, as well as my own production log. So check that out if you really need help. I'll link that in the description. Because I don't think I can fully go through my product. It's too long. But yeah. Okay. Production log. You're gonna be confused at this point. Where's the production log? You know, you just started this 5,000 word essay. When are we gonna start it? No, production log. So let me paint you a picture. You've started it, and someone mentions it. Cue the confusion. Isn't the EPQ just about writing a 5,000 word essay? Well, yes and no. I think that something that is not stated enough is that the production log is worth 70% of your overall grade. You know, your 5,000 word essay is only 30%. So if you're planning to win the production log, I need you to rethink that immediately. Whilst the production log is essentially your EPQ diary, is where you document your entire journey from choosing your topic to your research and having minor or major breakdowns when things don't go to plan, to reflecting on how you learn. You know, think of it as a behind the scenes of your project. Examiners want to see how you manage your project, how you use resources, how you develop and realize your ideas, and how you cope with things when things go wrong, because mark my words, they will go wrong somehow, and how you review your process. Notice how I use all the full AOs? That's because they matter. You need to get familiar with them. But yeah, so please get into the habit of using it properly. It is a lot of work, and the questions do feel unnecessarily long, and there were moments when I did wonder why I signed up for the EPQ in the first place, usually around 11 p.m. on a school night when I had 3 other deadlines. But it is where most of your marks come, and is the one where you can stress about whether your argument, you don't need to stress about whether your argument is strong enough for your sources academic. It's quite straightforward, you know, and AQA literally tells you what they want to see through the questions and AOs. You just need to do it. So get into the habit of updating it regularly, as much as you can after each working session. It becomes so much manageable. You do not want to be the person who's left it all to the last place, and it's quite satisfying to see it building as you go along. It's quite nice. Okay, first section, record of initial ideas. So this is essentially the origin of your EPQ. Think of it as a pilot episode to the crazy new series of the EPQ. Examiners want to see how your project was born, not the polished final idea. I think a lot of people fall into a trap thinking that they've already mastered everything. No. The messy brainstorming phase is where nothing really makes sense, is essentially what people want to see. So I have told you what specific areas, what should go in here, you can pause, whatever. But I'm gonna go through my own just so people can see what I did. So AQA have their own advice, and I personally brainstormed multiple ideas before narrowing it down. I explained why I took the EPQ, how I was interested in specific areas, and as you'll see, I was interested in quite a lot, specifically politics, media, socioeconomics, fashion. I am a weird person, but yes, so I had a lot of ideas, and how I eventually refined my question, and after researching and speaking to my supervisor. I also think my log shows how my ideas evolved rather than staying fixed from the start, and there's one thing EPQ is going to teach is that the process is not a straight road. I also opted to add my handwritten mind maps, although I don't think that's a good idea. I thought it would be, but reading my feedback from my mock project, it said that it did kind of take away from the professional aspect of the project, so maybe don't do that. But yes, I'll show you what I did. So that is my production log. Maybe that's a spoiler. That's what your supervisor will fill out. Oh yeah, see, there you go, 48 out of 50. And over here you can see that you do not need to hand in a mind map. It's not formatted appropriately, so don't do that. But yes, I'll show you. So this is how long my initial research is. It's quite a lot, but I think you need to flesh this section out as much as you can. I think this will be the easiest one as well, because it was for me, because I had started it off and I was feeling quite giddy. So yes, I talked about ideas I had, specific topics I had in mind, and then researching the topics as well as question, and then how I continued researching it from different questions to different sources. Sources are quite nice, but you cannot add links. I think that's the issue. So this is here, but I don't think it's too helpful, but yeah, it's that. Anyways, so then I summarized what my supervisor had to say, as well as what I've done to modify it. This is where my handwritten notes come in. I've done a lot of handwritten notes. I'm someone who likes to brainstorm quite a lot. Don't do it. Please don't do it. I don't think it'll be horrific. Maybe my examiner was too nice. I don't think. This page was horrible, by the way. Misspellings everywhere. Yeah, so that's what I did. But yeah, that's the first section done. So next is candidate proposal. That is when things start to get serious. So you've just researched what you want to do, and now you're going to go and finally propose something. So I think this was when I started. So this is when I clearly outlined my research question about social media and the UK election. I explained why I linked to my interest in economics and politics, listed specific academic sources, and described my 5,000 word report in detail. So that shows that your project is quite structured and well thought out. So as we go here, this is part A. So it's literally just these 3 boxes. I know a lot of people don't write a lot, and I think it was good for me, because I stated quite clearly what I intended to do, and as you can see from my feedback, it's good. Yeah, I would do that. Also, you need to state your subject, because this is when they find out whether you are going to do dual accreditation, which is when you write about topic, which is also another topic in your A-levels. You cannot do that, but yeah, that was not that. Part B and C. Now this is not for you, rather this is for the adults, the supervisors, whether they like it or not. Mine was quite straightforward. She said yes, and that's that. You don't really need to do much, but you do want to take into mind the feedback. I think that's something really important for the next section of the production log. Planning review. This is when you actually start getting into the proper questions. So let me lay it out. You just researched from any possible topic. You narrowed it down, your supervisor said yes. How are you going to approach your question? 5,000 words does not magically appear like that. You need to go and find out your sources. You need to, at this moment, this is how you organize yourself. This is also how you see the reliability of your sources. So it's essentially your organization error. I also really recommend using Notion when you organize yourself, because it's so nice to use the timeline feature, and it's quite helpful. But yeah, so that's AQA's advice. So for me personally, I use Notion and Cornell Notes to manage my workload. Notion has this amazing timeline where you can break down things week by week and show different steps and different things you're going to do. I think I also showed how I adapted my supervisor feedback, especially when planning primary research. I think it's also important to note that you're not planning the actual essay writing so far, but rather the research behind the essay. You cannot write your essay right out. Please don't write your essay right out. I feel like that's what everyone hypes up, the essay. But no, it's more so you actually exploring the question, and the essay being the reflection of the research you just did. But yes, so this is my planning review. I was quite, you can see from here, it's quite general, just a few, like a month, 4 weeks. That's not a lot. I don't know why I was so dry, and I think my supervisor said that it was not well thought out. Essentially, I just said I would read a book, but I didn't have a clear goal, I didn't have a clear hypothesis I wanted to test out. So that is what I took into account, and I planned everything weekly. I think this was helpful. I put this into Notion as well, and as you can see here, screenshots from my Notion. That is the timeline feature. Don't handwrite. Remember that. As well as my draft questionnaire. I also was going to do a questionnaire in my thing. Don't write. And yes, so that shows my planning. So then there's a big gap, from your planning, so that's your research, to mid-project. Now this is where it gets a bit weird, because you can change your question at this point, and that is what I did, and I think most people do that as well, and that's fine. AQA do not mind that. In fact, there's like a little section where you can revise your questions, and I think that comes from the actual research itself. So for me, my initial question was solely on the impact of social media in the UK general election. However, when I actually researched it and was starting to read into it, I came across the same idea again of mainstream media, and there was not enough on social media that I could fully flesh out. A lot of the sources and a lot of the websites that I was initially looking to use had actually discontinued like 2 months before. So had I actually looked into it before, maybe I would not have run into that. It's fine. It was supposed to be expected. So as you can see over here, you have to comment on whether it followed your initial plan. Mine did to an extent. This was when I discussed with my supervisor, and she agreed. I think my supervisor could tell that I was struggling at this time as well. So yes, she allowed me to change my title as well. And this is also when you talk about your next steps. So at that point, I had done pretty much all the research I needed to anyways, but because I had introduced the mainstream media impact as well, I hadn't properly considered that area. I just touched upon it a bit. So yeah, I talked about how I would do that, as well as how I would meet my first deadline. So I think that deadline was an 1,000 words deadline, where your supervisor can read it and give you feedback. And I think they can only give it to you once. So what I should have done was write my 5,000 words and handed it into her, but I did not do that because I'm silly. And you will do that because you will make use of the opportunity, because I really regretted it, because I handed it in and was like, just 1,000 words. It's on the point, and I did not have a full reflection on what I was actually handing in. So there was some uncertainty. So please hand in time. But yeah, mid-project review. Okay. Next is project product review. So this is when you actually hand in your, well, not hand in, but when you're close enough to finishing the essay. So this is just when you talk about what went well, what didn't, and what differences you made and why you made them, essentially. So what I did was I reflected on how I felt after broadening my research, adding case studies, improving my analysis. I also talked about how I used my supervisor's feedback to strengthen my actual essay. And this part of your production log again follows on receiving feedback on the first 1,000 words. And yeah, finish a full draft of your EPQ, please. It will make your life so much easier. Yeah, so I will show you my for my mid-project review, I also handed in a source evaluation table, but I'm really bad at printing things, as I found out, and it was tiny, as you can tell, very difficult to read, so keep that in mind. Yes, so project product review. So I talked about how it was from changing my research and how I felt near the deadline. I think I also talked about how I perhaps changed my analysis, as well as my how my supervisor thought my project was looking at. So yeah. Okay, next part. Presentation record. Now I have no idea why this exists. I love making slides, I love presenting things, but why does this exist? No one talks about it. So this is the slideshow essentially, and This is when you present your project. Note how I said project. When I first made my slides, I thought that I was presenting my findings. Not so much. You rather need to present how your project was like to a small audience. So I essentially just explained my slide structure, how I practiced timing, as well as how I adapted after supervisor feedback to focus on the process rather than the content. I would argue that this part was the most fun. I don't think it takes too much. I found it was quite fun recapping the few months to other people in my class. Yes, and I love making slides. So let me see if I can open my slides. This is my Notion, and this is my slides. Okay, I think I can open it. Can I? Okay, I don't think I can, which is annoying. Oh, okay, I did it. Okay, so as you can see, mine are quite dry, and I think that's something important with slides. You cannot have a buttload of information, you need to be saying it, okay? So this covers essentially the research and how I changed my title, what aims I had with my project. That comes into your research as well for initial ideas. So aims. This was my research. I don't think my pie chart was accurate. I will say it was not accurate, but I think it was generally okay. I did use a lot of public information, but I don't think the ratio is correct. But yeah, this was also my source evaluation table. I have little breakdowns. This was tiny. I think it was just there for aesthetic purposes, not helpful. And this was near my mid-project review, and then what I finally did later on, as well as what I actually found out and limitations I had, as well as my experience and advice. So it's quite a simple slideshow. It's nothing too bad. I really enjoyed it. I thought it was fun. I think there's examples online. They do too much. Don't do too much. I think that, like, I do agree that doing a bit is okay, but not too much. In terms of the production log, I just said what I intended to do, how many slides it was, who the audience is, as well as the content. But you have to write this down. Yes, and modifications done. So this was my plan. Don't handwrite notes. Don't forget that. Yeah, aims. I wish you could handwrite notes though. I think it was really nice to scribble on some paper sometimes. But yeah, that was my plan. This was my cue cards. I don't like holding flashcards. I like holding a sheet of paper. So it's just reminders of what I needed to say, as well as my slides. I printed this out too, so I told you I cannot print. Print them bigger, please. But yeah. Now, this is what your supervisor says. My supervisor said some nice things. I don't remember it going this well, by the way, but it was nice. And they do ask you some questions on your slides. I think that my questions were quite specific, actually. I think my supervisor quite liked my topic, so she asked me some things about what I thought about the actual conclusions and research I did. But yeah. Okay, almost there. Summary and reflection. Now this is when you finish your project. So I'm talking you've written the essay and you're almost handing in. So it's just what I learned and what you improved on, what you would change, and what sort of advice you would give. This is heavy in review. I think I enjoyed this a lot. I reflected on independence, research skills, essay writing. I think at that point I had not written an essay besides GCSE and A-level essays, which I've done, so that was quite nice. I also evaluated on strengths and weaknesses, honestly, and I linked it to how that would help me university-wise. I think at first I wrote quite a brief summary and reflection, but a few days later I actually ended up scrapping it and wrote all the lessons I learned from the EPQ. This also intersects a lot with your presentation. So it did feel like I was essentially recapping what my presentation was saying, and I think my supervisor herself said that they're quite joint. So if you're missing something from your slideshow, you can build that up in your summary and reflection. So if we go to my one, it's quite long, and I talked about key skills, what sort of things I fell out when I was researching, how it felt like doing it with other subjects. I think it taught me quite a lot about different things which I wasn't expecting it to help me with, like English. And my advice, which she said was very good advice, so maybe pause the screen and read it. Maybe it was quite helpful. And yeah, so that is the project log done, basically. Now, that is not the end of your EPQ though, you need to hand it in. Now, handing it in is weird because for how much the EPQ stresses how online it is, you have to print everything out, and I don't get why. I feel like it'll be more better to hand in on Project Key, but I guess not, because things can get corrupted. I'm not sure, but yes, you need to proofread, you need to see if your citations are correct, if your figures are labeled, that sort of things. And I remember getting my grade and actually being confused, like I did not think I would do too well, and I reread my essay and the spelling errors I've made are so annoying. That's going to annoy an examiner as well, and you don't want to annoy an examiner, so just read your thing. But I think it's also important to point out that do not put your work through a plagiarism checker. I think someone asked me herself, really suspiciously by the way, she was like, oh, should I put in the plagiarism checker? I'm scared I cheat it. I think if you wrote 5,000 words, you would know yourself you did not plagiarize anything. So please don't do that. You do have Turnitin, and I don't know if other schools use it, but my school did, and you have 3 trials, so you can check whether any of your sentences sound similar to those on the internet. I think it also would work for ChatGPT generated things, but don't be doing that. I think if you know you've written correctly, you know you don't need to go through it, but yes. So what I did was I finalized references, I proofread through my my report, I checked graphs, as well as making sure that everything linked back to my question. When handing it in, that's also another important thing, you need to print out the production log single-sided and not staple, which is also, again, it's annoying. I don't get, so everyone has an issue with my handwritten notes, so it's fine to print out the production log on single-sided. But yeah, so the reason why you print it out single-sided is because I think there's some pages of paper that your supervisor has to take out and replace with their own. So you know the section where I talked about your presentation record B, I did not see that until I got my marks back, because that doesn't show up on your project queue for some reason. I don't know why. So anyways, as well as that, you can hand in other things that add to your project, but don't do too much. So you can add like triangulation tables, sample questionnaires like I did as well. If you have any mind maps, whatever. Again, I'm a bit wary of handwritten notes, so do what you think is best. I also included initial samples of failed primary research, notion table, research table, and you can see that throughout the project as well, how I organized that. Do not print out all your research though. I think that the small amount is honestly enough. I think that if you are handing in all your research, it makes no sense because your report is going to be talking about it as well. But rather, handing in a small extract is fine because it shows that how you organize your things. But yeah, so now let's go through how my report actually looks. So that's my Turnitin score. I don't think the Turnitin score matters too much. I think if it's like beyond 20%, it's like that's scary, but that's not gonna happen. But this is how my project looked. I had a table of contents. I also, on my Notion, I have my template that I use for this, so check that out. I have little subheadings. Personally, for me, because I wanted to talk about different case studies historically. I found out it was better to just write down the paragraphs after I did my research and then compile that into one report. That worked for me, that might work for you as well. I've seen a lot of other people do that as well. So yes, I broke it down. So an abstract does not count in your word count, and an abstract is essentially the summary of your report in a way. It's like 500 words is short, it's quick, it should not be too much of a headache. I did initially do a literature review because I had read a book on social media and democracy, I believe, but it was not too helpful. It was just a summary, and I'm not sure how literature review would be helpful regardless, but yeah, it depends on your question. But yeah, that's my abstract. Do read it. Oh, also, when it comes to citations, people have different citations methods, and it just depends on you again. I think I had initially tried to do Harvard, where you put the brackets and you have the author's name as well as year of publication, but it was too much because I reference a lot. There's like references in every like sentence, as you're gonna find out. So I found it better to, I think this is Chicago in text. Again, go on my Notion because I have a little tutorial on how you actually do that. But yes, it's nice because I think at the bottom of the page you can see what sources I did. You can see I did source Wikipedia. Maybe, I'm not sure about the integrity of Wikipedia because I read something about toaster and yeah, not great. But yes, you can see different sources. This is my introduction as well as rationale, objectives. This follows the aims of what my project wanted to do essentially. I think I missed printing something out. That's not good, but yes, that's my initial hypothesis as well as what I had found out from my initial research as well as my methodology. Over here you see AO2, so you can clearly see that that I have detailed my research as well as different sources that I've considered. So this was a contextual overview that I did historically, politically. I am Brexit links to everything in politics. I'm sorry, it just does. And as you see here, I had a lot of citations when it came to my figures. That's why I chose to do the way I sourced. I have screenshot. I was someone who used a lot of photos. I told someone and she was quite she judged me a bit actually. She was like, oh, why did you use so much photos? I just did. I think they help, and that's something which my supervisor wrote in my feedback as well, that my pictures were quite relevant to what I was doing anyways. But yeah, I had some nice graphs. I tried to some of Sky News's reports are amazing politically, but I cannot find a nice picture of it without screenshotting the whole YouTube video I found it from. Maybe not great. Yeah, more graphs. I didn't draw most of the graphs myself. I think I will say that whilst I do really like my report, I think it's crazy that I wrote that was my first report I actually wrote. It annoys me so much. I think I can see my bias like seeping through it. Yeah, I wish it was more unbiased. I think I had a certain way I was gonna go through it. Yeah, I did not like that. I wish I did not do that. But yeah, I also wish I did some modeling of my own, but that seems a bit too ambitious. But yeah, you see AO3, I did use a lot of research as well as analyzing, because in the end, whilst there are a lot of researching you need to do, you don't want to just be rewording that, you want to be concluding your own thing from it. Yes, so I had a section on social media in politics in general, whether that be Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok. TikTok is so interesting to see politically wise because it's so new. I feel like the idea of social media has been kind of old, like 15 something years, but TikTok is really like 7 years old, which is crazy to me because I feel like everyone uses it and it spreads things a lot more crazier. I feel like on X there's certain people, but on TikTok it's like everyone. So it's interesting to see how political content comes through and especially for myself, I think that was GCSE summer, and I was getting targeted a lot, and I was someone who's not interested in politics, especially on TikTok, and I would see Labour posting how Rishi Sunak has an aura, which I do kind of agree when it came to bringing up what's it called, the national service for 18-year-olds. Not good policy, not good policy. But yes, so continued. This was this tweet. I would talk about, if I had to do this again, I would talk about the reliability of this, because I think this was so interesting. The professor who found this out is so smart. But it's a Twitter tweet. I don't think this is appropriate for a report, but it's an EPQ report, so maybe not too deep. Elon Musk's own tweet, question time sort of thing. I love question time, by the way. But yeah, this was so interesting, talking about memes and hashtags. I wish I did more of it. It was quite short for what I actually wanted to do. But yes, and this was my mainstream media. This was what I found out after the mid-project review, because this is when I changed my direction. So before, the social media section was stuff which I had already written. This was my newer things. Yeah, talking about different different platforms. I wish I talked about GB News. I don't think I did it, and I think it would be so interesting to see the demographics of who's using what. This was editorial bias, more on newspapers, tabloids, so interesting again. And talking about the younger demographic, also interesting. I think also interesting to see people my age's reaction to different political parties. Even now, I think it's only strengthened even more. We have the milkshake moment. I don't think this was necessary, but it was to be. Comparing the media dynamic, how this was when I think this was my proper comparison, but because it was a proper comparison and analysis, I think I leaned a bit too much into an opinion-based thing, and I don't think that was necessarily what I was supposed to do. But yes, this was my comparison, case studies, more, as well as what we can take away from it, which I think was quite nice. And this was my bibliography. I don't think this is formatted correctly. I think I just copied my in-text citations, which was wrong, because I do reference to the same things multiple times throughout my essay, so the citations are wrong because it's talking about the same thing. But yes, I went a bit crazy, but then again, you have to think about the fact that I used a lot of statistics. But yes, so that's my report. And in fact, let's go back up to see my actual feedback, so we can see what I did well and what I did not do so well on. So as you can tell, I did quite well on everything except AO2 and AO4. I was a bit surprised about AO4. I think I reviewed quite well. Maybe not full marks well, I don't know. Use resources, I understand this. I think that there were moments when I did not do so great. But yeah, so my supervisor said it was quite well presented, and it was quite clear and fluent. The images, I told you, the images did something. It was amazing, wasn't it? Yes, so my moderation teacher, she said that the research of initial ideas was really detailed, which was true. I think that was when I first started, so I was quite giddy on everything. And yes, the source evaluation table, formatting quite bad. Maybe print out a bit bigger, as well as findings and independent research making, as well as how I took upon supervisor guidance, because in the end, you don't want to fully be agreeing with everything your supervisor says, because it is your project, and sometimes there are instances when you could be recommended something, but it's not the best for your project. So you need to know how to say no and yes and be a bit critical. So yes, yeah, I think that was one thing which I did wrong in my essay. I did kind of cross into opinion. I'm quite an opinionated person, and I think you could tell through my essay, as impartial as I did try to keep it, as well as formatting. Yeah, my handwritten notes did detract somewhat from the professional appearance of the project, which was, yeah. But anyways, clearly I did put a lot of hard work, but I did not do it in one go. I was quite, I think there's always one person in the class who leaves everything to the last second, and that was me. I think from the start I did have a good plan, and you can see that quite clearly through my research of initial ideas. I was quite on task. I would do handwritten notes as well, like I was properly prepared. And then I think I would started slipping, and I don't think that was the correct way to do things. Don't fall out of momentum, please. Not the case, don't do that. But yes, so on my Notion, I have things about organization. If you want help on weekly things, I don't want to talk about too much about it just because I'm not sure how other schools do it. I know some schools do it in 2 terms, some schools do it in year 13, which is crazy. I would not be doing the EPQ in year 13. Don't do that. No, that's no advice. Just don't do it. As well as reports. I know that this is basically your first report, and that was the first report I wrote academically. Before that, I'm not someone who enters essay competitions and academic reports. I'm not like that. But yes, so this was structure, methodology, as well as how to actually use sources, as well as how to properly analyze things. So yeah, I think it's quite nice, quite helpful. I would be going on my Notion right now, and yeah, my report, as well as a feedback form. I think if you watch this video, can you literally go to the feedback form and tell me how it goes and whether it was helpful. I also have a little template for the EPQ if it's helpful, because I had to make my own template because I'm quite fussy. But yes, so I think that is going to be the end of the video. I hope that's somewhat helpful. I hope that you don't get too stressed out. I think that genuinely the EPQ is quite easy once you get into it. I think the only thing I would struggle if I was someone who did just maths, physics, sciencey sort of subjects, but I did like English, economics. I was someone who was quite used to analysing, evaluating, and something I quite like. I like to yap a lot. I don't know if you can tell. So I think the EPQ is fine, and you'll find it fine as well. I hope it's helpful. If there's any questions, you can say it down below in the comment section.